While we're gathering questions in the chat, one question directly to you, Rochelle. If you like, I like your trust angle, and and I think you would agree, even though you didn't talk much about the large language models, that they have an intriguing usefulness, somewhere there, right? And they do need to learn from dialogue data. And the chats you mentioned that are on the risk of being utilized, maybe without consent, are of course a treasure trove of such things. So what if Ivan were to work with a company that has such chat data? What would he need to pitch to you that would not lead to distrust? But that, how would you, what you need to hear from him, that you say, okay, sure, learn from my chat.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that one of the most important things about the work that I do, which is to promote recognition and acceptance of responsibilities that accrue to us under each of these guidelines when we're doing our work, is to consider the real world implications of our commitments to these principles. So for example, if Ivan said, we're focused on the technical solution to privacy, and here is how we do it, I would say, how are you meeting your commitments to ensure your assumptions are met? I know that your models require an assumption of independence, and I also know from data that that is never met. How are you going to get around that? So I would want to see evidence that each of the steps or the work that they're doing in algorithm development, testing, and deployment meet basic practice standards. So this isn't like a commitment to privacy. I promise I'll be as secure as possible, because that is a legal obligation. But your ethical obligation is to be accountable as a practitioner to make sure that, if a model has unpredictable harms, according to the ACM Code of Ethics, if it has unpredictable harms, it is a project you need to consider not doing. Is there a way for your company to have a go, no go decision built in, because you cannot guarantee that the assumptions will be met, or something like that? So, I mean, this is what's referred to as ethical reflection, that you would think about what you're going to do and then stop to check each task and make sure that you're still doing that thing. You haven't drifted out of the ethical responsibility sphere.
Ivan, any response to that?
So do you have like a checklist, I can really go through and make sure that everything works?
Sure.
Okay, well, it's not in our community. It's I mean, it's not existing yet. So I think it's time to like bring it in and make sure. I mean, we have some ethical research checks, but in terms of privacy, I mean, even like the main assumptions, for example, so it's known from security. So no security by obscurity. So everything is security has to be public and known.
Right.
And the same for privacy in NLP, natural language processing field. Like, we should publish the code and everything, all the experiments. And if this is not done, like, there's no trust. And the problem is, like, with these big large language models, we don't even know what are they trained on, because everything is private property.
That's true, but if you think about Deep Spark, which was just announced, a company or an agency, an organization that will utilize what has been published open source in an effort to be transparent, but will use it with absolutely no safeguards whatsoever. That is a challenge. And are you protecting your data, the privacy of your, constituents, if whatever you do is open so that someone can red hat or and come in and take the data? It is a very challenging situation, but I think that the transparency issue might be our biggest issue, that if we could figure out a way to tell people, be careful what you put on social media or share with this bot or whatever, if we can convince them not to trust LLMs, but to think carefully about the data, because there is no such thing as privacy anymore, would that be enough? Would we be able to be transparent enough? Some people are going to they're like, I don't have anything to hide. I don't care what happens, but
Rochelle, I'm gonna jump in here. Sorry, but I want to get Claire Brown's question in. So Claire, can I give you the mic? Just unmute yourself. Yeah.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, first thank you for the talks. I just there was something that you mentioned, Rochelle, about the life cycle basically of the data. And so it made me think that, well, what if we find ourselves partway through a project? Like we got added later, or we just didn't think about all these great factors that you've been talking about. Do you have any advice on how we can integrate these considerations when we're at a much later stage?
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I think what Yvonne was saying about the transparency of the processing, two things. One is to communicate, thank you for allowing me to join your project or anything. Can you describe the ethical considerations you have responded to up to now? And if they say, well, none, why would we? Then you're starting at ground zero. And for you, the individual practitioner, Claire, or your team as individual practitioners, you would say, okay, we are going to start with this commitment. Here's how we're going to do it. So that you want to confirm that your data are ethically sourced, which is going to be possibly your first stumbling block. That is, if you cannot confirm the data were ethically sourced, or that your use of the data cannot be reasonably construed by the data donor as a violation of their human rights, you might have to not do that project.
So yeah, thank you, Rochelle. I feel like you're echoing a conversation that I had with some physicians earlier today, that I was sort of wondering, how to straddle that very pipeline process that Claire mentioned. Ivan, I have another question for you. You mentioned that, theoretical possible, but empirically hard and unknown, and in part hard to study because you might not have the right data. So, given that there are a lot of people here in the audience too that are, well, I guess we all are contributing data of sorts all the time, right, in the sphere. What requirements or what kind of data would you need to test some of what you develop theoretically, or to advance the research in this field? Because, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could apply DP to text and then feel at some point in the future comfortable about the use of these chatbots when they get trained on these dialogues?
So this is the excuse me, this is the $1,000,000 question. I mean, I'm asking myself. So I think, the angle I'm coming from is the natural language processing field. So we're working with text, and then, once in a while there's coming input from other fields, such as, I don't know, cryptography, so how to make secure computations on models, which is interesting part, not part of today. Then it's coming like privacy. Can we protect privacy of models? And traditionally in natural language processing, the way of making data private is anonymization. So basically you take names and addresses and just black them out. So anonymization, but it's not privatization. We know it has issues and things like that. So then there's this huge hammer, very big hammer, differential privacy. So everything is private. You don't care about what it is, and you just use the hammer, and then everything is good. And I think it's a great hammer, but for a different task. I think there's a real mismatch of these two. Like the notion in this differential privacy field is very awesome, works very well under some assumptions, and is full of very rigid formal proofs which make it like super safe in private sense. And then we have this thing of language, and I think there's a real mismatch. And I think these communities have been going together and exploring stuff, but I think it's now time to say it doesn't fit. For the language data, we need a different notion. It's not anonymization because it just doesn't work. Maybe it's not even differential privacy because it is its own thing. So what else? And this is the open question for research, as I said, like challenging enough, because this, you cannot apply into this under anything crazy. So it won't fly, I guess. So what else we should have? And it could be theoretical kind of research work, it could be empirical, depending on what you want. So people like theoretical guarantees, awesome. They come at a price. So maybe empirical guarantees are enough. That's what I would ask Rochelle. Like, if I tell you, okay, I have this formal guarantees, but they are just super weak, so nobody really, it just doesn't work. Or, well, I have these empirical guarantees, so I just, had the test data, I just tested the models, and they're saying so. Will you buy it?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, so two quick questions, because I know we're at the end of our hour. One is that the guaranteed universal human right to data privacy needs to be respected, and official statistics, national statistical organizations around the world are struggling to promote the idea that the government is a trustworthy data steward. They are able to control their data and maintain its privacy. At the same time that governments are trying to be as efficient with the taxpayer dollars as possible and use data that they buy from other sources. So you have this, even if you're just in a really small niche, this bleeding from conversational privacy and data privacy. Even let's just say only official statistics is going to be private, and that's where we use that term. And elsewhere we call, you know, hopeful or something like that. We just don't use the term privacy anymore. That would
Okay.
be more transparent than what we're doing right now.
Sounds good.
Very thought-provoking ending here. Thank you both, Rochelle and Ivan, and thank you everybody for participating here. We will, as I said, post the recordings and the slides online, and we will keep you informed about future seminars in this series. So thank you very much.